Bring a trailer cars keep getting worse. There are two enemies of logic and reason that can really mess with your head, and those two enemies are called coulda, woulda, shoulda, and nostalgia. Nostalgia could manifest such as, maybe my dad shouldn't have sold the 1985 300 TD wagon with 90,000 miles. Maybe we should have just cleared the junk out of the garage and used the car on nice days 30 years ago. Coulda, woulda, shoulda is a little bit like that. It sort of works like, when I had $250,000 in cash sitting around, I should have bought a 300 SL Roadster when they were affordable. You'd be amazed at how many people missed that boat and regret it. Sometimes nostalgia, though, can be a little bit more innocent. And nostalgia can lead to you thinking about coulda, woulda, shoulda, and maybe falling into a trap of thinking that everything, is going to be just as good now as it was then. I remember a specific example that has nothing to do with cars. I was hanging out at the UCF Student Union, and I had a friend who told me about a band that she was really into called Minus the Bear, and that may not resonate with all of my listening demographic, but I think some of you will remember them. They were from Seattle. And this is back in 2006. And so much later in 2021, when Madeline was born, and I was up all night, literally all night, freaking out because I'm a new parent, I started listening to Highly Refined Pirates and Minas El Oso, which were the two first albums from Minus the Bear, and arguably the two best albums, for the first time. And I thought to myself, 15 years ago, I should have listened to this band. And then I went to go look up whether they were still together or not. And surprise, I missed that boat by something like 4 years. And I thought to myself, I could have, would have, should have gone to see them. So that's maybe a more innocent interpretation. But then when we start acting on those coulda, woulda, shoulda haves, like maybe stalking an ex-girlfriend on Facebook or buying a $25,000 car without inspecting it from some shady auction website, that's when things get a little bit dangerous. And after this long intro, which I hope amused you to some degree, we're going to talk a little bit about how cars on Bring a Trailer keep getting worse, sellers keep getting more optimistic, and buyers keep playing Russian roulette with their money. Now, I've been called now to give opinions on dozens of BAT cars that have been bought and sold on the site. And I've had some in my shop, and I've had some that customers bought and then sold, and then other customers bought after they were on Bring a Trailer. And let me tell you, I've learned some things about these cars that I'm going to share with you, and I have a hypothesis, and maybe so you can validate it, that the car that sells on Bring a Trailer is actually not as good as like the average Mercedes in its class, whether it's a 560 SL or a 420 SEL or a 190 SL or a 230 SL. Here's why. Number one, I found that not all, but a lot of Bring a Trailer cars are photographed favorably so that they have more corrosion on them than is disclosed. I've seen a theme here where a lot of cars that claim to be rust-free cars are actually photographed in such a way where all of the corrosion and rust and or previous body repair is concealed from the buyer. If you guys want to know what rust repair costs, for most people don't do rust repair or collision repair the right way. You have to have select jigs, you have to have a spot welder, you have to have a lot of equipment to do it right. You can spend $10,000 in a couple weeks and then have to do it 4 or 5 more times when you have a really rusty car. Now, accident repairs are another thing. A lot of the time, accident repairs aren't even really discussed at length. And if they are discussed, they're usually discussed in a more positive light so that the people who are trying to hide them don't have to go back and produce any paperwork, and they could say, oh, it was just a little tap or whatever. It's not a little tap when a whole quarter panel's had to be replaced. Now, some of the people that I've interacted with who've had these cars may feel a little irritated that I'm disclosing all of this, but I have to warn buyers. These cars are well below average cars. They're well below average, and most of them have had little to no maintenance. That's the other thing. A lot of these cars will be misdocumented to where it seems like the maintenance that was done is significant, but actually it's not significant maintenance. I would say, for example, if you're buying an R107 and the car has unknown mileage or it has mileage over 65, 70,000 miles, if you're going to pay, I'm talking about how much you pay for the car, not what the car's worth. If you're going to pay at a way above average market price, like you're going to pay $28,000 for a 1989 560 SL with 80,000 miles, I personally would not touch that car unless it's had a timing chain done with all genuine Mercedes components and the receipts to prove it. Subframe mounts done with all genuine Mercedes components and the receipts to prove it. An AC compressor, Nippon Denso or genuine Mercedes. At least the defrost actuator, all the fluid services, the flex discs, lower ball joints, all that stuff. I'd want to know that the radiator is a recent replacement or at least in good working order, because you can't get those anymore. The reason I bring this stuff up is because all this stuff adds up. Everything I just listed to you is like $9,000 to $11,000. Especially when you throw in some things like fuel hoses, shifter bushings, tie rods, a steering coupler, steering box reseal, repairing any exhaust leaks, which are a thing on those cars. All of that stuff comes into play. And what we see quite a bit on the R107, particularly with the 560 SL, is the paper trails for these cars are almost always selective, where the owners would spend money on things that posed an immediate threat to reliability or safety. And then the other stuff that was going south typically got ignored or swept under the rug. And the reason I'm putting this stuff in this video is because if you're buying one of these cars, you really need to vet this stuff. But there's, you can fix a car that has a bunch of mechanical needs. The problem is when the car has a bunch of rust or accident damage. And that's where Bring a Trailer provides zero accountability. Bring a Trailer almost sets it up so that they photograph, I believe that Bring a Trailer selectively and dishonestly, okay, this is my opinion, but I think it's a provable one. They selectively and dishonestly edit photos to make the cars look better than they actually are. I know the sellers and the photographers provide photos, but they're culpable because all this stuff is being hosted on their auction site, and they're not actually vetting the listings to make sure that issues with the car's bodies are being thoroughly and completely and honestly disclosed. Why? Because they make money from selling cars. That's why I don't sell cars. And we're going to talk about why I don't sell cars in another video. But I'm not above calling out what I see as a scam on people who are bidding the cars up into the stratosphere. If I were to run an auction site like that, I would put a disclaimer on there that says, most of the cars on here have significant mechanical issues that are not disclosed. Not all of them, but most of them. You should go out and inspect the car in person, or else you won't stand behind our bid. You should also understand that if you have to have major mechanical repairs done in this car by a competent repair shop, it's going to be $15,000 to $20,000. You don't get to pick how much money you want to put into the car. The cars are going to be really expensive. They just are. And what a lot of people don't understand is if they go out and they buy something like a 220B and then they compare it to a 230 SL, just because the 230 SL is a more expensive car doesn't mean that the engineering deviates that much on the fin car, the W110, 111 versus the W113. Underneath, suspension-wise, driveline-wise, brake-wise, etc., they're all the same car. The engines are basically the same engines. You could spend your money sorting out carburetors or mechanical fuel injection. It amounts to about the same thing. So you're going to spend just as much money sorting out a 230 SL as you are a 220 SE. You're going to spend just as much money sorting out a 560 SL as you are a 560 SEL. And because Bring a Trailer doesn't really caveat their owners into saying, hey, you just bought an expensive car, congratulations, now the big spending really starts, I think this is where the dishonesty is. They need to actually tell people that when you buy the car, it's going to need a lot of stuff. And there's probably a lot of stuff that's not disclosed, because that's the truth. And we find that I've interacted with an alarmingly high number of Bring a Trailer purchasers who have told me that within their first or second test drive, their cars broke down or suffered a major safety issue. And nobody's vetting these cars to make sure that they're actually safe and reliable. They go and do like a 1 mile test drive. Really, what they should be doing is filming a 35 to 40 minute test drive under all kinds of conditions, particularly stop and go traffic and at highway speeds. You know, you always see the typical Bring a Trailer test drive. We're going to drive the car on a country road holding my camera phone. Any car in this shop in 10 minutes, unless the engine's not really hooked up or in it, I can make it go do a test drive like that. We don't make, if that's all we had to do, like if we lived in Gibraltar and people had to drive 1.2 kilometers and that was the greatest distance they had to have, I wouldn't have any work. The problem is when you start actually using these cars, and when you use them in real world conditions, all the ugly things come out. The fact that the steering is dead in the center comes out. The fact that the front subframe vibrates at 65 miles an hour starts to come out. The fact that the rear axle leaks oil everywhere starts to come out. It all comes out. All comes out in the wash. You know, and it's really unfortunate that people have had to spend this much money, but we either have to have a rethink in how much money we spend on classic cars, whether they're classic Mercedes or not, because the labor rates for the stuff are going up, or Bring a Trailer needs to start honestly creating their own market reset by fully disclosing that most of the cars on there have significant mechanical needs. So anyway, I hope you guys found this video useful. Please like, share, and subscribe. I am sorry if you bought a car and Bring a Trailer and it ruined your affinity for classic Mercedes. Just remember that paying more for something doesn't always guarantee you get the best of something. That's why Richard Mille watches exist. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great experience with the classic Mercedes you do own and love. And if you've been hosed on BAT, please leave your comments below. Thank you.